I call this meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. We appreciate your attendance at this board meeting. By attending meetings, you can learn about the accomplishments, needs, and concerns we face. The board meets regularly on the first Monday for committee of the whole meetings and second and fourth Mondays of each month for regular meetings. Open forum for the public is available only at regular meetings. All meetings are open to the public except closed and exempt sessions, which are permitted by certain sections of Iowa Code. All board decisions, however, are made in public open sessions. The board is not a forum, it is a deliberative body. Accordingly, it receives communications, both oral and written, as a medium of information. It does not debate the contents of such communications, but considers them in making decisions and in the establishment of policies. During each regular board meeting, there is an opportunity to address the board by completing an open forum request and giving it to the board secretary prior to the meeting. Each person may have up to 2 minutes of time to speak. This is a time of listening by the school board, so the board does not make any comments during open forum. The issue will usually be referred to the administration for further study and follow-up if necessary. When the board president recognizes you, direct your comments to the entire board and limit your remarks to 2 minutes unless extra time has been approved by the board president prior to the meeting. The school board president will recognize one speaker at a time and will rule out of order other speakers who are not recognized. Only those speakers recognized by the chair will be allowed to speak. Comments by others are out of order. The school board president shall promptly rule out of order any discussion by any person, including school board members, that would violate the provisions of state or federal law, our open forum policy, or the statutory rights of privacy of an individual. To ensure that the board can conduct the important business of the district, the following guidelines apply to all members of the public who attend board meetings. The board asks that all members of the public treat open forum speakers, district employees, and the board with respect. Did I lose my microphone? I think I am. I'm talking right into it. Let me try that one. Hello? That one's working. Individuals are not permitted to engage in conduct that interferes with the ability of other individuals to watch the board meetings, interferes with the ability of other members of the public to offer comment to the board, or interferes with the ability of the board to conduct its business. Demonstrations during public comments, such as clapping or cheering in response to either public comments or statements made by board members, is discouraged. Those wishing to display placards, signs, and/or banners may not block any attendee's view of the proceedings. Director DeSalvo, would you please read our board priorities?
I'd be happy to. The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment of our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. Direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impacts of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Thank you. And Director Potts, would you please read our mission and vision statements?
Mission statement: to enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. Our vision statement: education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you. We'll move on to student board reports. Interim Superintendent Schneckloff, would you take that on, please?
Sure. We have our students here. Let's go.
5 Central students were named to the All-State Band and 1 student to the All-State Orchestra. 6 Central TAG students have been selected to be speakers at the TEDx Youth event this coming January at the Putnam. The girls swim team qualified for the state in 3 relays and 2 individual events. 2 Central varsity volleyball players have been named to the Iowa All-Stars volleyball team. Central's iJAG program is hosting an after-school snack sale to fund the program's plan of work, including leadership and career development activities, social and civic awareness programs, and community service. 6 Central students earned Division I ratings at the Iowa State Dance Team Solo contest this last Saturday. 1 freshman was selected as a solo finalist for the 2018 9th grade Opus Honor Choir, and 1 senior was selected for the final round of solo auditions for the Iowa All-State Festival. Central processing units, they won the St. Ambrose robotics meet last weekend at St. Ambrose, and they defeated 13 other area teams. And lastly is a Central alumni, Austin Howard. He signed a contract with the Washington Redskins.
North raised over 15,000 meals, amounting to over 12,000 pounds of food during the student hunger drive this year, contributing to the 500,000 meal total of this year's hunger drive in the Quad Cities. Congratulations to North football coach Cruzy and staff who were selected to be coach and coaching staff of the year for Class 4A District 4. And congratulations to the Norwalk yearbook staff who received 17 individual awards at the Iowa High School Press Association State Fall Conference. The North Drama Club, Troop 3994, attended the State Thespian Festival at the University of Northern Iowa this past weekend, and we're excited to see sophomore Casey Scott chosen to be a state thespian officer, one of 6 thespians in the state to represent Iowa. And the class of 2023 high school night for future Wildcats and parents will be held on November 15th at 6:30 p.m. with teacher, coach, and activity sponsors in the North Auditorium.
Tomorrow night at 6 p.m. we're going to have 41 new scholars inducted into our National Honor Society chapter. Saturday we're having a fundraising event called Dancing with the Stars where different clubs and sports get to perform and compete for raising money between them. And that'll be at 3 p.m. in the auditorium. Recently, we had 2 groups go on cultural trips. One went to listen to Angie Thomas, the author of The Hate You Give, talk about her personal experiences and going into writing the book. And another group that went to the Hispanic Art Museum in Chicago. And then we also had recently 16 North artists were chosen to display their art at the Festival of Trees, which will be on November 15th. And we actually had Carlina Hildebrandt win Best of Show. Nick Wynn and Flo Guzman both received honorable mentions for their art. And Anna Sturmer placed 3rd with her painting. And finally, we also have Essence Wilmington and Mallory Owens, who won 1st in the senior and junior dance solos, respectively, at the QC Legacy Dance Competition at Central High School.
With anything else you'd like to add, that concludes our student board reports. Thank you, President Johansson.
Thank you very much. Are there any board reports? Director DeSalvo.
I would just like to update everyone on the superintendent search. We had open forum sessions week before last, and unfortunately we didn't have the attendance that we had hoped for. We had three people that showed up at the West High Open Forum and 5 people that were here in the boardroom that provided comments and information about what they would like to see in a superintendent. On our online survey, we have had really good results. I believe we had over 500 responses there. So at our next board meeting, which will be November 26th, Ted Blasing from HYA will be here, and he will give us their report of those open forums and then the online survey information and all the public meetings that occurred as well. So we're moving right along, and once we get that information, it'll be shared with the board, and we'll continue with our timeline and seeking out a new superintendent.
Thank you. Any other board reports? Director Hayes.
I've attended a nice play, Pete's Grand Plan, which was a play that was focused on bullying at North High School. It was sponsored by the Sandy Miller Foundation. I also sat in for about an hour this morning on the TLSC Academy Jumpstart teaching for the intermediate and high school teachers in the district. I visited Williams Intermediate and spoke to the principal there and was invited to return this afternoon to observe the passing in the hallways of lunchtime and see how the hallways were pretty crowded and getting the students back in the class. And it wasn't quite what I expected. I think everyone was pretty much in place within the first 10-15 minutes. It had all been resolved. I've been to several focus groups with Sandy Schmitz, and we have one scheduled this week, later this week, with various community members to discuss community concerns over the disproportionality. We're looking to have between 8 and 10 community leaders there for that discussion. Our follow-up groups will be with students, and then we'll have a final one with parents to get their thoughts on the disproportionality. Basically, with the meetings with Sandy, they've all been focused on, we've had individual meetings, we've had group meetings with administration to discuss this topic. As unfortunate as it seems to have to reinforce the importance of altering one's mindset, relationship building, and understanding the needs of others that differ from yourself, in my opinion, basically that's kind of what we're dealing with. Things have been overlooked due to, some of these issues, but we're really working to try to resolve that and rectify it. In one of the meetings today, it discussed creating the CLR culture in classrooms and VABing, which is being taught to teach educators to validate, affirm, build, and bridge. Basically, validate is to make legitimate that which the school and mainstream have made illegitimate. Affirm is to make positive that which the school and mainstream have made negative. To build, to make the connection between the home culture and language and the school culture and language. And to bridge, which gives opportunities for situational appropriateness or utilizing appropriate culture of linguistic behaviors. I witnessed a situation today at Williams where a young man was walking with his pants sagging really low, almost between his knees, and the teacher was not mean at all. She walked up behind him. This all took place in a matter of seconds, just walking through. None of us never stopped walking, and she matter-of-factly said to him, have you forgotten your belt today? He said no, continue to walk. She politely asked if he could possibly tighten it a bit. He did so. Everyone continued to walk. That was resolved without being any type of confrontation, where she basically, just affirmed what was going on and made mention of it, and he took care of it. And it's not said, it's not really what you say, it's how you say it in order to get some of the students to respond without any type of confrontation or having it escalate into something large. Basically, our children are not pieces of rolled out dough. We cannot place them on an assembly line and cut them out into shapes that we feel they should be. When you teach traditionally, we must question ourselves as to who are we leaving out. Everyone is not everyone is not cut out for traditional learning. Some children require more understanding and patience than others. It's the teacher's responsibility to build a relationship with the child and identify with his or her needs in order to receive the most effective response. I feel the CLR training is a step in the right direction. However, it must be understood that CLR is not a journey, it's not a race. As an FYI, CLR strategies, which are skill sets, are nothing without purpose, which is the mindset. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other board reports? Director Beck, do you have anything?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on, in my haste to get the meeting started, I failed to mention a couple of things. One is that Director Beck is joining us by phone, and Director Mayfield, really unfortunately, is ill, and he is always at our meetings, and so this is, you can imagine the stress he must be under just to not be here, and I just wanted to recognize that. I wanted to welcome all of you out there, and we have a special treat. We have a lot of special treats, but one in particular, we have Representative Winkler in our audience tonight as well, and I wanted to have a special welcome to her. It's always a pleasure when she's here. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to communications. Let me get to that. Director Hayes, would you want to read those events for us?
I'll be happy to. November 14th at 9 a.m. State Board of Education meeting, Iowa Department of Education in the Grimes State Office Building, 400 East 14th Street, State Boardroom in Des Moines. November 14th at 5 p.m. UEN Urban Education Network of Iowa NU Banquet, Downtown Marriott, 700 Grand Avenue in Des Moines. November 22nd and November 23rd were closed for the Thanksgiving holiday. November 26th at 6 p.m. regular board meeting, Jim Hester Boardroom, 1702 Main Street in the ASC Center. December 3rd at 5:30, Committee of the Whole meeting, Jim Hester Boardroom, 1702 Main Street here in the ASC building. And December 10th at 6 o'clock p.m. is our regular meeting here in the Jim Hester Boardroom at 1702 Main Street in the ASC Center. So in December, we just have one regular meeting and the Committee of the Whole meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Next is open forum. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak should fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. The Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president will set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak during open forum. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community during open forum. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. We have 3 open forum requests tonight. Mr. Stage asked earlier for some additional time, and so I'm going to grant him 5 minutes. Representative Cindy Winkler will be first, and please come up to the microphone, give us your name and address, and after that will be Cary Stoughton, and for Representative Winkler and Cary Stoughton, you will each get 3 minutes. Okay, Cindy?
I bet. There we go. Thank you. I'm happy to be here, and it's nice to see you, Mr. Gosa. We've missed seeing you, although we've heard you on the phone. Cindy Winkler. I live at 630 Court in Davenport, and I want to talk to you a little bit about, I think it's probably the title of it is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in regard to our state budget and the difficult decisions that you will have to make. I've listened and paid attention to your 5-year plan, and I really respected the fact that when you passed the plan, you talked about the fact that it wasn't necessarily written in stone. It certainly was a guide, and you were hoping that potentially we could get more than the 1% supplemental state aid, but there were some other things you were looking at. So I thought it was important for me to give you a little bit of information in regard to the FY20 budget. So supplemental state aid for FY20 will not be set until sometime mid-February. We have 30 days to set it. The first day of our session is January 14th. So it will be, you won't know what your funding level is until mid-February. The October REC only identified growth for the FY20 budget year at 1.7%, which is an additional $101 million. Now, the official one that we follow is the one that comes out in December, and I hope that they can increase that amount. But some of the things that we come into play as a result of decisions that were made by last year's legislature, the tax cut actually removed $93 million from our income level in FY19, and that is intended to increase as we go along. The governor signed a 7.5% increase for our Medicare organizations, managed care organizations. That adds another $102.9 million as we move forward. So in the December Revenue Estimating Conference, they will also identify any standings appropriations that are more or less permanent, but the legislature can always not withstand the standing appropriation and adjust that amount. And certainly they will be projecting contracted services. That $102.9 million increase with Medicaid will be one of those contracted services that will come to play as they do the Revenue Estimating Conference. Since we are no longer setting supplemental state aid 18 months out, the school funding level that will be a part of that Revenue Estimating Conference will be 0%. And so anything else that the legislature decides will be coming out of new revenue. And we're talking about a $101.7 million increase. And we've probably already, as I mentioned this, we've spent it about 3 different times. We do have to have a balanced budget. The only reason I'm sharing this information is because you will be well into making decisions about next year's budget, and certainly decisions about this year's budget, before we set supplemental state aid. And it does not look very bright. Our revenue last year was 4.9% increase, but they never projected something as low as we're seeing in the October REC Revenue Estimating Conference. So I wish I had better news in regard to the potential of not a whole lot of more in supplemental state aid, but I guess I would say elections have consequences. And so as a result of these decisions, what I've read in the paper by the majority party is that they will do additional tax cuts. That's what their goal is for this next year, and continue to, in their opinion, make the business climate more attractive. It's amazing to me that they never realized that investing in education is the biggest impact you can have on a positive business climate, but we'll continue to work on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Winkler. Next is Cary Stoughton.
Good evening. My name is Cary Stoughton. I live at 6213 Fillmore Street in Davenport. I am a West High graduate. I have 1 North High graduate, and I currently have a freshman and senior at North right now. talking about my senior, I was speaking with a couple other parents, and it was brought to my attention that North does not have the first graduation ceremony this year. I'm sorry, that's what I'm here to discuss, is the graduation ceremonies. They've been on a rotation for several years, and North was last ceremony last year and should be the first ceremony this year. And in speaking with another parent, it was brought to my attention, they saw on the Davenport Schools website that Central was listed first, North second, West third. And I'm just wondering why that was switched, if it was a board decision, if the board votes on it, why North is not getting their chance to be first ceremony this year. I did speak with Principal Chelf, and he said there was a reason and he would get back to me. He called me back a few days later. It took him a while. It's when Dr. Tate was stepping down, and so I understood the delay. But he's never really gave me a reason. He just said that it was changed. He's sorry if it affected any of my plans or anyone else's. And I did let him know that on the Central website and the West High website, it's still listed North as first ceremony, West second, and Central third. So he did say that he would get in touch with the other schools and have them change that and get everybody on the same page. But again, I'm just wondering why it was changed and if it's a board decision or who decides that. It affects a lot of people. People make their plans a year ahead. Actually, you could make it a couple years ahead since it was a rotation that had been in place for at least 8+ years. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Cary. And next is David Stage.
Hi, Dave Stage, 1907 West 3rd Street, Davenport, Iowa. First of all, I was here not too long ago and talked about when the state gave you guys 1% on our contracts. Basically, a year and a half ago, you guys worked out a 3-year deal with us on our contracts. Anyway, then the state this year gave you guys only 1%. All right, well, we got a 2%. I don't understand why you never came to the people and explained to them that the state shortchanged at 1%. We got to take the money from somewhere to pay you. You know, I'd say, why didn't you? That's, you know, instead of getting in the red and staying in the red, why didn't you come back to the people? You know, it's mind-boggling to me why you didn't. People say it's not the right thing to do to come back because we already made a contract. Well, you know what? You guys did the contract in good faith, but the money's not there after the contract was wrote up. So it just, I didn't mean to do that. But it's, oh, I'm settled down. My God, this stuff is all nonsense. It don't make sense. We've been in the red for years. And as long as we've been in the red, we're still getting raises. They're small raises, but we're still getting raises. It doesn't make sense to me. We're not a company where we make a product. We get our money from the state. And when you get in the red, you think out of the box. And that's just one way to think out of the box. It's hard to do. It's hard to come to people and say, hey, we gave you this, Now, I got to take it back. Well, you're not taking it back because you don't have it to give to me in the first place. So, and we got a lot of decent people in the system that would be willing, I'm sure, to stand up because it's the right thing to do. You just heard Ms. Wink talk about zero, you know. We still got another contract to go through. We got 1.5 years left on our contracts, most of us do. And that was an honest, legit thing you guys did 1.5 years ago by giving us a contract, by giving us a raise, thinking the state was going to fulfill the 2%, 3% that they've been giving you, but then they decide to, you know, I'm trying to bite my tongue. But that's a whole different story. But I like to do that fundraising stuff. Anyway, this is something that we wrote up here that I don't know why you guys can't use something like this, but it says, I, blank, employee of the Davenport Schools, really ticks me off, voluntarily donates 1% of my salary for the remainder of 2018-2019 fiscal school year. I'm donating the 1% due to the lack of funding the district received from the state. You know, that's a shame that we even have to come here because the state's not giving you what you deserve. And what taxpayers, we pay that dang money, and we're being cheated. Because the state is, and this law that they so-called say that Doc Tate broke or whatever, that law is discriminating against our children. And it's a shame that it's allowed to be taken. And it's allowed that they're doing to the Davenport schools what they're doing to them, the state of Iowa. And to... you know, it's nonsense. But to even get into this outsourcing, that's really nonsense. In 1.5 years now, when our contracts are up, the state took everything away from us. All you got to do is give us a salary. You can't beat that. There's no way in heck outsourcing can beat that. And there's no way we could beat outsourcing. You guys can sit down, you can bring in. That's what they're there for. They're there to cheat you out of our money, our tax dollars. That's what them companies do. So you need to get the outsourcing off the table and start thinking in reality and come back to the people and literally talk to them. Because that's what you got to do. You know, we can cut here, we can cut there, but every time we cut something, we're hurting the kids. That's what's happening. We can cut half hours off an hour or 8 hour schedule all day long. You know, it's a shame that that stuff has to do that. When's it going to stop? When's it going to stop? That's what I want to know. Anyway, I'll ramble all night long, but it's got to stop somewhere, and you guys got to pick it up. And don't be afraid to come and ask the people. We shouldn't have to come to you and volunteer you anything. You have to get up and literally tell them, I got 1% from the state, I give you 2%. Help me out here. It's not that hard. But it's got to come from you. It can't come from us. We give you a day's wage or a day's work every day for the wage you pay us. And it's shameful that we have to come up here and fight for our jobs when you guys got to man up and do the right thing when it comes to this. Stop threatening people with outsourcing. Just come to them and talk to them and tell them we don't have it. They won't give it to us to give to you, so we got to do something. Have a nice night. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. And thank you, Cary, and thank you, Representative Winkler. The information that all of you bring is really important, and it always gives the board great information and great perspective. So thank you very much. We'll move on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move that the board accept the consent agenda as written.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director DeSalvo?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Potts? Yes. Director Beck?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo?
I move that the board approve the following resolution as recommended by the administration for adoption of the bills from the bill listing periods of October 18th, 2018 through November 7th, 2018. Resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of October 18th, 2018 through November 7th, 2018.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right, we'll call for the vote. Director DeSalvo?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Potts? Director Beck?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to superintendent report.
The two items that we'd like to talk about are just in the short time that in my interim position, I want to give you guys an update frequently on the special education update and report and disproportionality issues. Tomorrow we go, as it was read earlier, we go before the state board, and we are prepared to listen to them, hear the suggestions that they have for us, and be able to move forward. In this short time, we have really worked hard to be on the same page as our state advisor. As we've learned, she speaks for the state, and so we really see her as an ally, and we're working hard to utilize her in that fashion. When we look at our 8 citations, the one that I'm going to report out on tonight is the compensatory education. Right now, we've completed around 50% of the IEP meetings, which results in a number of minutes that our students are owed for compensatory education. And in the first couple of days, the leadership recognized that we were running into a hurdle, and the hurdle was hiring certified teachers to conduct the compensatory education. And so while that's a negative that we have quite a bit of compensatory education to hand out, and that's one of the things that they're going to discuss with us tomorrow, the positive in that light is that Ms. Susan Downs, Kim Hoffman at the AEA, and our HR department sat down and worked out a solution to this issue. Davenport Community Schools, well, a potential solution to this issue. Until it works, it's not really a solution, I guess. But Davenport Schools is about 1/3 of the AEA, and right now we need to draw on our workforce to complete these compensatory hours. So the AEA has decided to step up and become the hiring agent for these compensatory hours. And that allows us to draw on a much wider net of employees, and they're willing to contract at a higher rate to be a little bit more enticing for teachers to work these hours. So as of now, we have conducted, like I said, 56% of those IEPs, and we've We've done about 100 hours I think it's about 4% of the hours of compensatory education. We have a long way to go in that area, but the movement and the partnership with the AEA is really going to make a difference in that area. I would say that the second big update, and I would say that this is a celebration, many of the issues that we are dealing with in special education have to do with the system, how we operate and how we move. Susan Downs, Kim Hoffman at the AEA, and Sandy Schmitz have begun to revamp our services. What does that look like inside of our schools to be more proactive, to provide supports to buildings instead of a reactive fashion? This is at the very beginning stages, but I'm very excited about what I saw. As a past building principal, to have the expertise to come out and provide solutions to make sure that we're doing things correctly in the areas of climate culture engagement and academics would be a very beneficial thing to our buildings. The third thing that I want to talk about is in the areas of our citations, it's very difficult to collect data. So I've been working closely with President Johansson to what does the board need to have so we can have conversations sitting around the table so you can ask good questions and essentially keep the leadership on the right path to accomplishing these citations. Our goal is to be as transparent as possible. Some of the hurdles that we're running into is the data that's collected from the IEP management system, the IMS system, is very difficult to get at. So we're currently brainstorming ways, how can we have real-time data to show that we are completing the hours necessary, that the meetings have been held. Tomorrow, the data that the state board is going to share with us is as of November 1. And I would say that that's kind of, here we are on the 13th, that's a couple weeks back. Well, what if our data is not going in the right direction, as you would always say, President Johansson? So those are the things that we are looking forward to having so we can have real decisions, make moves as necessary in the areas of our citations. Those are the things I want to talk about in the special education audit. I've asked Associate Superintendent Schnaden to give us a report on our disproportionality and where we sit with that. Wherever we go in our meetings and in our staff developments, Director Hayes is often there as well. Our Vice President Hayes is often there as well. And so you heard some of her reports and some of the efforts that we've got going in that area. But Associate Superintendent Schnaden, if you would kind of give us an update on our disproportionality issues and where we are with that.
Good evening. As Interim Superintendent Schneckloff said, he asked me to bring you up to date, similar like he just did with special ed, like where are we at with disproportionality. Director Hayes has been a great member of our team, and she's reported out some of that work already to you, but I thought I would try to break it down so you had an understanding of who is it we're working with, what is it we're doing, and why are we doing it, and then you'll have to help us drive what you'd like us to keep bringing to you on a regular basis around this important issue. We currently are working with 4, what we're calling our national consultants, the experts. We've hooked ourselves up with Marquay Winston, and she actually came to us through Sandy Schmitz. And her work is really assisting us in goal setting, guiding us through best practices, using her own expertise in the work she does as a consultant to challenge our thinking, to challenge our systems, and to kind of be a sounding bouncing things off of her and getting direction from her about our next steps. So we got her spinning over here, and we met with her in a conference call just recently. And you've heard the name Shiraki Hawley. And Shiraki he's a national expert on this whole idea of cultural competency. And he's been in our district several times already, working with pilot buildings, Jefferson, Wilson, and Central. He's trying to do some things around what they call jumpstart, or coaching up teachers and individuals, leaders, to bring in some of those best practices into their work on a daily basis. And he's really guiding us all through the discussion about what behaviors are cultural and how do we evaluate how do we affirm the work that we do with students and with their differences. Shiraki's worked with leadership groups, he's worked with classroom teachers, and he's worked with superintendent's cabinet. We also have fortunately have been able to work with probably one of the biggest experts in the field, and that is Dr. Anthony Mohammed. He's the author of many books. He's very sought after, and we were able to get him to come and work with our teams, our leadership teams, and he really has worked with trying to create that sense of urgency and changing our mindsets, as Director Hayes said earlier. That idea around disproportionality, how to track it, how to make differences within the classroom and the way we approach kids and the issues that we face. Anthony has worked with our leadership teams, which are really principals and lead teachers, members of their building student achievement teams. He spent day-long sessions with us. And most recently, I believe we just were able to commit him to come back in August and spend 2 days with a leadership team and really do some intensive work, day-long kind of stuff after school's out. And leadership teams will be able to focus with him on specific issues around their building. And then Dr. Marcia Tate, who she came and met with, actually she's met with every group of teachers, I believe, and all of our strategists and coaches. And she really is an expert. She's been doing it for over 20 years about engaging kids in classroom work. What are the kinds of things that teachers need to do immediately that will begin to help reduce referrals, which is one of the areas where we certainly see some disproportionality, and what are some ways to address some of those cultural differences? And she's really had a half day with all of our staff across the district. So those are the who that are working with our leadership team right now. The work that's really happening is we have an instructional alignment team. And I know we throw a lot of acronyms around, but we call it the IAT. But it's really leadership, AEA, a group of about 10 or 12 of us that meet currently every Monday afternoon for a couple of hours. And Linda Hayes is a member of that group also. And we really try to move forward with our teaching and learning plan, but now we have this whole new lens of coming into our work, and how does this issue of disproportionality play out inside of that work we're doing. And what we did is we tried to decide, of all the goals that we're working on, of all the work that's going on in Davenport in that teaching and learning plan, what are the things that have leverage that are really important? Like, you got to have this before you can get this. What are the things that are measurable that we can put a meter to and decide if we're making a difference? And then what are the things that we already have the data on that we can break it down into subgroups? We can look at African American females, or we can look at Hispanic students, or we can look at boys in the middle school ages. And so we each had an opportunity to go through all those goals and narrow our focus down. And kind of in a nutshell, I'm not going to go into great detail with it, but we landed on preschool. We know that's something that we can really focus on, the disproportionality, the number of kids that are having that opportunity. Less than 50% of our kids have a preschool experience, and even fewer of our African American kids do. So what can we do to increase those numbers? The fast literacy is a literacy assessment that we give on multiple occasions, so we can monitor that. We can guide our work towards that. We're going to look at attendance. We all know that that's important. We're going to look at referral rates. Who's being asked to leave the room and for what reasons? The removals, the suspensions, advanced coursework. We're going to be focusing on looking at disproportionality in the number of kids, or the percentage of kids rather, that take advanced coursework, and why is there such a discrepancy between the groups in that area, and then that whole idea of being on track for graduation. So those are kind of the key areas that we've decided as an instructional alignment team that we're going to focus our lens on, and we're going to be digging through the data and coming back and reporting and guiding the work around disproportionality. Again, it would be preschool, literacy, attendance, referrals, removals, advanced coursework, and on track for graduation. And then kind of the next piece was, after we had those goals decided, we got on the phone with Marquet and we shared with her where we were headed and what we were thinking. And she really started to challenge some of our thinking around the systems that we have in place. What kinds of adjustments could we make? She challenged us in terms of how we were going to hold people accountable to that work. And she also has some tools, we call them tools, some templates, some report cards, some ways that she in the past have tracked and kept people on target to get this work done. And she's going to be sharing that with us in the very near future. After that, we broke into some actions that needed to be done. We identified what work needed to be done now so that we could begin getting into the real work. And we know that we've got to look at what are those indicators that are going to make a difference. How are we going to track those indicators? And we got to put some procedures and some processes in place to hold people accountable. Because if we don't get the results from our buildings, who don't get the results from their teachers, who don't get the results from their students, we're not going to be able to accomplish this work. So we know that we've got to have a system in place that is going to be where the leadership's going to be committed, our message is going to have to be very clear, and we're going to have some very high expectations about the need for change. We know we need a strong data system. We believe those items, those areas that I told you earlier, we have all the data we need in that arena. It's our job now to disaggregate it and to use it to make good choices. We know that we're going to be looking for some of these tools from Marquette Winston, the scorecards, the data review sheets. So we're not going to try to reinvent. We're going to take her best practices and make them work for us in Davenport. And then we know, if we were affirmed working with her on the phone the other night, that we need to use the existing structures that we have in place. We don't have to throw everything out and start all over. We have a very strong teaching and learning plan, a strong commitment on the part of teachers and leaders to make some progress. We got to use that tool. We just got to put this lens of disproportionality on top of what we're doing. So that's basically where we're at right now with disproportionality. And again, you can work with us and give us some direction on what you'd like to hear about in the future as we move forward. But that's kind of where we've been and where we're at right now.
You can say that's your report if you're done.
That concludes our report.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to other items requiring action. May I have a motion regarding approval of the SBRC application for modified supplemental amounts for open enrollment out?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board approve the administration's recommendation to approve the application to the School Budget Review Committee for $745,701.60, or the maximum amount in modified supplemental amount for open enrolled out students not on the previous year's certified enrollment for whom the district will pay tuition in the current budget year. The district intends to levy cash reserve for this amount.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director DeSalvo.
Poor Claudia, but Claudia, I read this, but I wonder if you could put it into terms a little easier to understand for us.
I'll try. This is another one of those items, you've approved a few over the last couple of meetings, where we have expenses for which we are allowed to request the spending authority. So that, in a nutshell, is what this request is for. This is for open enrollment students that we're paying the tuition out for, that weren't on the count. So we're now allowed to, and the state collects that information from our certified enrollment. So we're now allowed to request the spending authority.
So these are students that were not on our books, they open enrolled out of our district?
They open enrolled out.
So other districts got the money for them?
From us, yeah, we have to.
So we paid them out.
Mm-hmm.
And now we can go back and ask for the money to be replenished since they didn't attend our schools. I'm sorry, I can't see her too. This is going to make me crazy.
We're requesting the spending authority.
To get the money back for the money that we've already paid out to the other schools for the students that left.
It's the authority to spend that money. The actual cash is coming from our cash reserve levy.
Right. But we want to be reimbursed, so to speak.
Correct.
Okay. Do we know how many students did it say in here?
111.9.
Okay, okay. And that was for counts as of October, or?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion?
I have a question. This is Director Beck.
Sure, Director Beck.
How do we have 0.9?
That comes from the various weightings for the students.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? I've got a couple. The wording on the motion, it says in parentheses, or the maximum amount. What does that mean? Is that the maximum amount that we can ask for, or is that the maximum amount that we can give to the other schools?
That's the maximum amount of the spending authority that we can request, and that number really comes from the state based on our certified enrollment. And as audit adjustments are made, it could go up or down. So that language is basically a contingency to allow us, in the wording of the motion that you're making, will allow us to receive the full spending authority should that amount end up being higher than the $745,000.
So if a student enrolled out to another district that has a higher per pupil spending, do we pay that district the amount that we pay, or do we pay that district the amount that the state allows them to spend?
I believe it's the higher amount that the other district receives.
So we're responsible to, let's say a student who's going to one of our nearby communities that gets to spend more money per student that they have been for the last 40 years, right?
Yes.
And it's an additional $150. We pay that additional $150 out of our coffers.
I believe so.
Oh, you're making me sick. Now, you're saying we can kind of go back and get it later, even though
we're requesting the spending authority.
Yeah, I guess. It still strikes me that every time we spend money and we can't even charge interest, and here we're spending money theoretically to send a kid to another district, and we have to be paying for that money until the state ends up allowing us to spend the money. And it's just another expense that the state, I think, ends up putting on us, if I'm understanding the way you're explaining it.
In a way, you could look at it that way. And again, our request is for the spending authority.
All right. Is there any other discussion? Okay. Did you have something, Natalie? Oh, remember, you guys, if you gotta get in, get in. Okay, thank you. If there's no other discussion, we'll call for the vote. Director DeSalvo?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Potts? Yes. Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion regarding approval of the SBRC application for modified supplemental amounts for LEP instruction beyond 5 years?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the application to the School Budget Review Committee for the amount of $206,360.32, or the maximum amount in modified supplemental amount for LEP instruction beyond 5 years. The district intends to levy cash reserves for this amount.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? I've got a question on this one. The beyond 5 years, so, and I don't remember all the rules on the LEP instruction beyond 5 years, but isn't that generally disallowed?
Yes, but I think this is one of those exceptions for the English language learners.
I understand, but I mean, is this one of those where they might or might not allow it because it goes on beyond? I mean, we're spending an extra $200,000 plus. We've already spent it, right?
Correct.
And we're just hoping that they will allow us to spend that money.
Again, we're requesting the spending authority.
Right. I just don't, I'm not comfortable with it. I don't know what else to do. If they were to deny it, we would probably have to change our policies and not spend it or something, right? I mean, spending beyond 5 years, is that required by law?
I believe so. This request and the one you just approved a minute ago are somewhat automatic from the state. It's expected that each district that has these costs will apply for the spending authority. So I'm not saying it's a slam dunk, but it's an expectation. In fact, last week I got an email saying, hey, you're one of the districts that has these expenses. We haven't seen you take any action yet. You know, please fill out the form and take it to your board for approval. So I think it's an expectation of the state.
And I understand it's an expectation, but my expectation would be that they would allow us to spend the money instead of going back out with our hat in our hand and saying, will you please let us spend the money that we already spent when you said we shouldn't have spent it. And there has to be a more reasonable solution. I'm very uncomfortable. We do this a few times a year, and we hope that they will give us that authority. And I don't know, maybe that's something for our legislative advocacy committee to tackle. Okay, is there any other discussion? All right, we'll call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Gosa?
Yes.
Director DeSalvo?
Yes.
Director Potts? Yes. Director Beck?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is we have a couple of discussion items. First is a discussion on the long-range facility plan. I'm not sure who's going to make that lead that discussion. Mr. Maloney?
Isn't it on? Recall in March of 18, you agreed to a long-range facility plan emphasis on energy efficiency, saving general fund money, and we did some work on the 10-year plan spreadsheet and changed some priorities around and so forth. And that included an earmark of $3 million that might have gone toward the district buying solar arrays. And at the October COW of this year, Committee of the Whole meeting, the discussion consensus, we believe, was that you may be willing to entertain a power purchase agreement for a solar project, but you thought that we ought not to spend save dollars cash on purchasing solar arrays outright. The long-range facility plan leadership team of your staff has met several times and corresponded about that since then, about reprioritizing some of the projects that had been in the plan to take that $3 million that had been earmarked for possible solar and reallocate it in order to rearrange some of the other plans on the project. And we wanted to first give you a little reminder of what is actively underway now, and then tell you some of our other priorities that we were contemplating might be done to rearrange some of the projects on the long-range plan. Underway now and for construction for bidding this spring is that renovation to the central locker rooms, PE locker rooms and restrooms. You may recall the vivid slides that we showed of that about a year ago. To finish the corridor and locker replacements at West High School, we have 1 year remaining. That will be the second floor, and all of those corridors will have been updated and all the lockers replaced and so forth. There was in the plan a staff parking lot to be added to Hayes Elementary. That is getting underway. We still have ongoing energy projects from energy efficiency measures line item, and those are the energy efficiency measures that resulted from the commissioning at North Central and Walcott. Those are underway now. We have some improvements to access controls. Phase 1, the main entries, is all completed, but we are still continuing work on security, and there's a Phase 2 access control project that is getting underway shortly. That is the staff entries, the PE entries, things like that, where we'll be adding the automated controls. There was tuck pointing at Central High School to be done this summer. There was the construction of an athletic field house at North High School, which is getting underway to be complete next summer. There is still some additional work to do at the Creative Arts Academy. The Phase 1 was what was necessary to get them moved into that facility, and there's still a bit of money set aside for that. That's going to require an amendment to the lease. Recall that because it's a leasehold, Eastern Iowa Community College will do the actual improvements and then bill us as part of the lease. We don't pay for improvements to leasehold directly. There are a variety of other projects that we that are smaller ones, many of which that don't require a public hearing. That threshold is $130,000. You do get the architect contracts and the construction contracts for those, but there are a number of them that go on every year. Amongst the ones that we believe need to be moved up as a result of reallocating the money that otherwise might have been held for solar is replacement of the boiler and mechanical system at Hayes Elementary. That's a project that has been deferred several times. It will be nearly $2 million, and it's one of those end of life cycle for the boiler and mechanical system at Hayes. So that's one that we'll be recommending that we move that up to actually get that design underway and do that work next summer. There's a window replacement at multiple schools that we would start to plug in over the next several years. That is part of the exterior envelope assessments that we've had underway for some while now. We would move back up. Recall we had pushed out the renovation addition projects at elementaries to add the multipurpose rooms and to get dining out of the basement. And when we plugged in that solar money and that other energy efficiency money, we pushed them all out a couple of years in order to do that. And if we no longer wish to commit the money to solar, we would recommend moving those elementary schools back up in the schedule. Jefferson would be recommended to be the next one in line to have the multipurpose room addition and renovations of the interior of the building. We do 2 or 3 improvements to outdoor learning spaces each year. Those are smaller costs, usually $20,000, $40,000, that sort of thing. There is one that we've been discussing at Sudlow that would be shared with Washington that might be as much as $150,000. We think that the outdoor learning spaces are important, and they're particularly important to our students who live in poverty, who often live in apartments, don't have outdoor access, don't have their hands in the dirt, so to speak, and in the spaces where we've done that, we know that getting kids outdoors and working with their hands in the dirt improves their performance in other domains. So those are relatively low-cost projects, but we've been doing 2, 3 of them a year. We would move up as well a CTE lab expansion at North. It's a problem we've been trying to solve for several years. And right now, the engineering classroom at North is the last remaining classroom in the district that does not have air conditioning. So we hope to solve that problem. There would be a number of others that in that 10-year spreadsheet you would see get moved around to make the money match year to year to year. But the ones I mentioned in the beginning that are underway are ones that had been in the plan. Some of the other things that I mentioned, moving Jefferson back up to start next year, solving the CTE problem at North. We also would move up the CTE renovation addition at West. It would come a couple years sooner. And also we would add an athletic facility at West that would start after next year. We would get North done this year, start on the one for West the following year. The year after that, when the National Guard complex completely turns over to us and we move the baseball field over there at Brady and all of that, we would take care of Central's athletic facility. So those are the things that we had been discussing, and we wanted to get your reaction to that before we put it all into the spreadsheet and present it to you once again for your approval.
Are there any comments from the board? Director Gosa?
I have a question about the Creative Arts Academy. You said that Eastern Iowa Community College does the work and then we reimburse them. So is there like a handling fee? We got to pay them extra money because they're essentially the project manager, I guess?
We have had our staff actually project manage that. They issue the purchase orders, the contracts to the contractors that do the work. The contractors bill Eastern Iowa, and then they bill us as a part of the lease cost. It's a means of us being able to have improvements made, but we are only able to pay lease expenses out of Pebble and not use that for improvements to leasehold properties.
Okay. My other question along those lines is, when we have stuff bid versus a college having it bid, I would assume there's a little bit of a price difference there.
Well, the same rules apply and we're in the same market. In the cases of the data and the code upgrades, the things that we had to do to move in, we actually got the quotes and provided them to the college staff who then did the actual procurement.
Okay.
Director Hayes.
You had mentioned the repairs on central locker rooms, bathroom. I missed the time frame for that.
That is to start work sometime before school ends. We've been working with Principal Flynn on what best suits his needs because we will not be able to fit it in the window of the summer weeks only. So we'll have to start work before school's out, and it will run into September, October possibly before all of the work is completed. So we've had a couple of conversations with Principal Flynn about what's going to be the best way to fit the work in because it can't all be completed during the summer weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Director DeSalvo.
Thank you for sharing all that. That's a lot of exciting stuff for our district, a lot to look forward to in our schools. The Hayes boiler system, how long have we been kicking that down the road or delaying that project?
My recollection is that when I arrived here in 2014, it had been bid a few weeks prior to when I got here, and it was about $400,000 over budget. And Hoover was the same time and the same problem, so I may be swapping the numbers around, but it was originally in the plan about 5 years ago, and then it was determined to be well over budget, and it was deferred and deferred and deferred, and we think it's time that we take care of that.
I agree. Can you give me a timeline for the North project?
For Hayes?
The North Athletic Facility project?
Yes, design work is underway right now. We expect to be bidding in January, February. So award of bid will be February, March, and it will commence immediately because it can be done while school's in session. It was our goal to have it complete for the start of school. And of course, that's going to be painters going out the back door when the kids are coming in the front kind of a deal to do that. But our plan was to be complete when school started.
Well, I sure appreciate it, and all the other things on the plan, and I look forward to looking at them on your, when you plot them all in the timeline. So thank you for sharing that.
Anybody else? Director Gosa.
I do have another question. So along the lines of when we do projects and stuff, obviously with the central project, we had a lot of setbacks with that. Do we do a lot of outside work during probably January and February, our coldest months, where you're not going to get a lot of production and stuff like that? I mean, is that something you guys factor into when you're trying to determine that stuff?
Yes, it factors in both to schedule and productivity, and it factors into cost. If we know we're going to work during winter months, we know that we're going to have to pay extra for winter conditions, for scaffolding and tarps and heat and things like that, and that affects schedule and it affects cost. And yeah, we think about that. There's a whole life cycle of the project that work planning commences months and months before the architect approval is brought to the board. That's usually step one. Then we get to 95% documents and hold a public hearing. That's step two, so the board, and then we have award of bid. So for almost every project over $130,000, the board votes at least 3 times, sometimes more, on that project.
Okay, so I guess I'll go further into that question so I get the answer I'm looking for. Would it be beneficial to us to schedule that so they're not doing outside work during those months so it doesn't cost us more money?
We always try to avoid, we try to get well, for example, if we go out to bid for a project that's an addition to a class, to a building, and we do that in the spring, the idea is that we can have it dried out and be working indoors by winter. I mean, that's the way we plan. Once in a rare occasion, because of the circumstances, we started the Fillmore edition. You may remember the groundbreaking, I think, was in December or something like that. And that was because of the schedule of the entire project being about 18 months and having to finish in August when school started. That was an exception where we started something where we knew that winter conditions prevail and we had to have heat for much of that project. That's only when it's unavoidable, because the direct answer to your question is yes, we take that into account.
Okay. Being a construction worker myself, I appreciate getting to work inside during the winter. I don't get an office job, so.
Director Hayes.
Mr. Maloney, is it possible that we get a copy of that sheet that you're working at to use it just as a comparison until we get the final draft of it, just to kind of go over those?
Yes. The prior versions, of course, are available to you in board docs. You have to recall the meeting, but you can always email me and ask me when it was, or I can send you a copy. And before we made a bunch of revisions, it's kind of time consuming. We wanted to get your input. And the next step would be to bring that 10-year plan spreadsheet back to you, where you would have it in advance of the meeting and have time to look it over. And then at the meeting for approval, make any revisions that you wished, or say, well, come back in a couple of weeks with some more work, or say, looks like you've done your homework, we like it like it is.
Anything else? Director Gosa.
This is the last question I'll ask, I promise. The Hayes boiler, is that good to get through the winter? I mean, is it like in super bad shape that it needs done right now, or if we can get it done?
It's the boiler, it's air handlers, it's going to be a lot of duct work because of changes in the mechanical code. We now require a lot more outside air introduction into the building than certainly in the 30s when that was built. So in addition to changing the boiler, there'll be a lot of the hydronic piping will be replaced because it's old and decrepit and so forth. A lot of new duct work, unit ventilators in classrooms will be replaced. We'll also be doing classroom lights will be converted to LED and the associated work with that as all part of this Hayes mechanical upgrade project. So we're expecting the grand total of construction design fees to be just under $2 million.
Okay. Is the boiler good enough to get through the winter? Yes,
we don't expect to have temporary heat this
Okay.
winter. We do
All right.
not expect that.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Anything else? Director Beck, have you had any questions?
No.
All right. I was trying to take notes, but I couldn't keep track of everything. And I wasn't sure exactly what you were saying. The $3 million that you are spending on these projects came from energy efficiency modifications and solar, is that correct?
The energy efficiency modifications line item would remain the same, and in fact, we would bump it up a little bit.
Okay.
By taking, so we have the $3 million that had been to solar, and we have about $890,000 proceeds from 1606 Brady sale, which closed last Friday.
All right.
So we add that back into the mix and apply it to many of the same projects that were already underway, just pulling out the solar.
So does that say that the Davenport district will not do any solar for at least 10 years?
No.
What's it say?
That says that the $3 million that was in the next 2 years that might have been directed to purchase of solar would be redirected to these other things that I've discussed. The energy efficiency measures line item would remain the same, and it would be increased by $500,000 the next 2 years because we still want to focus on energy efficiency measures other than solar. And we understood your conversation at the October Committee of the Whole to be, if you have a PPA that makes sense, bring it to us and we'll think about it, but we don't want to spend our cash on buying solar outright. That's what we thought we heard, which prompts us to suggest these changes.
But, okay, so what I think you're saying is that solar is completely out of the question for at least the next 2 years. Is that correct?
These changes would take away the money that might have gone to the outright purchase.
Right.
PPA there's still a PPA out there that's trying to be brought back for a recommendation for you to consider to approve or deny.
Right. I mean, the PPAs don't require any capital investment, right?
Correct. I'm saying that there's still a PPA alive that is being worked on. This would take away the money for outright purchase of solar.
Well, you asked for comments, and I'd say I disagree with that. And I may be the only one on the board that would say that, and we can see what you come up with in your plan. But I think to disregard the opportunity to, especially if we're spending money from these funds that can be used to purchase something that's going to decrease our general fund expenditures on energy, which is the same fund that goes to pay for our teachers and the rest of our employees. It's really bothersome to me that we say, especially in this time of we're looking at modifying our budget, we're going to the SBRC with a 5-year plan and all of that, and we say, as a board, we still don't accept that premise. for at least 2 years. So I just wanted to express that. Is there any other comment? Okay, then we'll move on. Thank you very much. The last section is something that we list as board protocol. And we try to get to this once a year. And I just haven't gotten to it this year. And these are kind of like rules for the board. The board generally abides by Robert's rules, but it doesn't completely. And so I want discussion on these things from the board. Did everybody get this, or is this just me? Okay. First one is really interesting. So it's a procedure or policy for board members calling into meetings. We've had some challenges recently. We've had 3 board members and up to 4 board members that have called into meetings. And sometimes these meetings are really challenging. We have meetings that you out there are not aware of, where it may be an exempt meeting, a closed meeting, we're having hearings. There are certain types of meetings where we have board members calling in. So tonight we've got Director Beck is calling in. Director Gosa is frequently traveling for his work. Director DeSalvo is occasionally traveling, and Director Mayfield right now is really ill. And so we had a challenge a few weeks ago with we had 3 board members that were calling in. I was conducting the meeting, and I didn't realize that one of the board members had dropped off the call. And so that board member lost half an hour of opportunity to participate in the meeting. So I just wanted to know where the board wants to go on this. What do you, because I started to write a policy, and I said, well, maybe we just don't allow board members to call in. But that seemed kind of drastic. So I'd like some conversation. Director DeSalvo.
I would disagree that if you would not allow people to participate by phone, because sometimes that's the only way we can get here. Dan and I are working a good 50, 60 hours a week, and then doing this on top of that. So we're trying to give the time that we can. Linda too. I know Linda puts in a lot of hours too. And those of us that have to work or travel, if we're able to jump on a call and participate, I appreciate that opportunity, because it helps me to be able to participate when I can't be here in person. And I think it would be a loss to the board. I think it would be very difficult if you didn't have that opportunity. You'd have several of us missing. You might have trouble getting a quorum at times, unfortunately. So we volunteer our time. We volunteer even when we're who knows where, sitting in a hotel room after working all day. And I think that should be respected if we're willing to do it. I think it should be allowed.
Thank you. Director Kosa.
I will say this, as one who frequently calls in. I have been dropped on calls. Mary always does a great job getting me reconnected. With that being said, I know that there are some people that think that I don't have this district's best interest because I phone into meetings. I will tell you, I have 3 kids in the Davenport School District. I coach a lot of the kids in the Davenport School District, and it irritates me to no end to hear that. On top of that, I work all day. I get paid to work. I don't get paid to sit here, okay? I do this because it's the right thing to do. I have kids that are in the district. I get directly affected by actions that happen right here and within the district. And not being able to participate because I have to go where my work tells me, I think is wrong. Sometimes I start my day at 4 o'clock in the morning and I stay all the way on the phone all the way till I do all this. I miss out on a lot of opportunities at work when I phone in for these. I've had to take time off of work for doing expulsion hearings or exempt session hearings and stuff like that. And I know a lot of people don't know about this, but when I take time off work, that costs me pension hours, health and welfare hours. That cuts into my pocket, but I do it because it's the right thing to do, what I was elected to do. And to say that I wouldn't be able to phone into a meeting, I think is ludicrous. And I understand it does get hard, and it's challenging for me. I've had to do these while I'm walking through the airport, and anybody who's been through Chicago O'Hare knows it's crazy. And you're trying to participate by this because it's what I'm here to do. It's why I do it. Again, I have 3 kids in the district. I will have a 4th one in a few years that will be coming up too. I'm a graduate of the Davenport Community School District. I believe in this district, and that's why I do this. And that's why I phone in for every meeting I can. I don't think I've ever missed a meeting or a vote. And I know I got a little bit hardcore on that, but that's where I'm at with that.
Director Hayes.
I feel the phone meetings, they're not always the best way to meet, but when you have an interest in participation, I think that they should be allowed. Occasionally life steps in and you're not able to, everyone would like to say that you're going to be here every week, but sometimes it's not all possible. I know I've had a couple bouts of sickness where I've wanted to participate and be here, and it's hard, and you feel almost like a slacker. The public has elected you for the office and you're not able to attend, but if it's possible that you can attend over the phone, I feel that that should be an option, just to listen and be able to know what's going on and especially participate in the votes.
Anybody else? Director Potts.
I think it's just a question of time before we are allowing people like that, when you're gone, to actually show up on our screen, and you'd actually, be here. Be here, you'd be there. I think that's going to happen. I think it's important that we maintain a quorum. I mean, if we said you can't be on the phone, then there are going to be meetings where it's just 3 of us playing pinochle, and we're not going to be able to do any business. And I know our board members that are on the phone are just as frustrated by it as maybe some of the spectators, and on occasion maybe ourselves, but some things can't be avoided.
Director Beck, do you have anything to say?
Basically echo everybody else's comments. I mean, the only reason I'm phoning in right now is, life has a way of changing your plans, right? When I ran for this office, I didn't know I was going to have a maternity leave. So I think if there are legitimate reasons for having to phone in, I think it's totally appropriate, because at least we're still able to participate and we can make a quorum. And I think Director Potts is correct that at some point in the very near future, we're probably going to easily be able to video in and see what's going on. I think it's more important that the people who are phoning in do the research so that they're equally prepared. But we all do our research before every meeting anyway, so, just because you're on the phone, it shouldn't be any different. So it may seem different to people in the audience, but I spend just as much time getting ready for these meetings as I do for those that I'm actually at.
All right. Well, and I have to say that I agree. In fact, Mary has been looking for ways that we could actually have a complete board meeting by calling in. And there are certain rules, there's certain legal things that we have to abide by, but it may be as simple as the secretary and the president being at the meeting. If we're going to have like a 5-minute meeting and people are all over the place and could call in for a 5-minute meeting, things like that, which is how the AEA handles some of their meetings. Huh? Oh yeah, we have. We've had some that were only like 3 minutes. but anyway, so we're trying to do that. One of the things that was, there are two issues that I have to mention. One is that, so Director Beck is on the phone and we hadn't heard from her for quite some time. I have no idea whether she's on the phone or not. And if she had dropped off and missed half an hour of meeting and we were going to have a vote, that would be challenging for her. And what responsibilities does the chairperson have, or do the members that are on the phone? Director Gosa, you said it's simple. When you drop off, you just call Mary and you get back in, right? Yeah. I mean, is
and
that...
I've done the same thing.
Right. Is that an acceptable procedure that we just agree that if you are calling in and you drop off, you contact the board secretary and she'll get you back in? Is that reasonable? Go ahead, Director Gosa.
I guess that would be up to Mary, or should we get a hold of Joe? Because Joe does it. What's easier? Looking out for you.
Joe and I can work out the details, but if the board agrees that the procedure will be that the board member will be responsible for contacting me, if that's what needs to be established. If it's the board member's responsibility, the board member who is participating by phone, it's their responsibility to make sure they get in contact with me or Joe. We'll figure it out to let us know they've been dropped.
And so as a chairperson, I just want to make sure that we don't get to a position where if somebody drops off and they don't get back in, that we don't have to go back half an hour into the discussion to catch that person back up. That's why I want to make sure we all have that responsibility then. If we're calling in, we've got to make sure we're in, right? Okay. The other thing, I'm going to tread lightly. This doesn't have anything to do with anybody here, but I will say that I've been admonished for allowing as many board members as we have had participate by phone. And that's part of why I brought this up also. It's just, I feel as strongly about this probably as all of you, and Director Gosa, I agree, and I believe that all of us have the we have that commitment to the board and to the district to participate, and everybody's working hard, you're doing all this, you're participating at night. You might have homework even to do at night, and you're still doing all of this. And I'll defend, and I have defended. I just want to be careful that I don't get defensive about our perspectives. And so I hope you'll all understand that. I'm trying to be very positive about this, and I'm going to present it in a positive light if I ever get asked. Director Potts.
I know to whom you reference, and I think the point is that we are a sovereign board elected by the public, by the citizens of this town, and we create our rules that make us function as effectively as we can, and if somebody in Des Moines doesn't care for it, tough. Let him read that.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Some of those words are enlightening, and I'll use some of them if I get asked. Director Gosa.
I just want to add something else. Just because when I participate by phone, I'm not asking questions, doesn't mean there is a reason for that. I usually will talk to Director DeSalvo or Director Hayes, even Director Johansson, and I will pass along what I would like them to talk about for me on my behalf. And then if I need to chime in, I'll chime in. That's why I do this. I mean, I travel a lot for work, and I hope those do read the meeting minutes and do understand this. It irritates me to no end to say that I don't have a vested interest in this when I do have kids in the district. I think we did one meeting one night, and then I wound up calling Interim Superintendent Schneckloff, and we talked till 1 o'clock in the morning trying to figure stuff out. So just because I'm not sitting right here doesn't mean that I'm not on the phone. I've talked to Director Hayes multiple times for hours on end, or Director Johansson. Julie cuts me off, but just because I'm not sitting at this table does not mean I'm not. I still get the same phone calls and emails from concerned parents and constituents and stuff like that. So I do try to call everybody back, email them back, or however it goes. But again, I'm going to say I really do hope they read these minutes. I will be quiet and not mention it tomorrow, but it just irritates me to no end because I do not get paid to sit here. I do this because I have kids in this district. I graduated from this district, and I believe that this is the right thing to do, and that is why I sit right here. There's no gain here. We put in a lot of time. I mean, you guys see some of this, but there's a lot of extra meetings that we do. We do expulsion hearings and everything like that. There's a lot of extra time and effort that's put into this for someone that sits on a high horse up there that probably gets paid and does not have kids in the district to tell me that I don't care. Irritates me to no end, and I'm going to quit right there before I get myself in trouble.
It's a good idea. Thank you very much. And I got to say, you know, all of you board members, all of us, but I'm really inspired by what you've said. Truly, I am, and I think that it'll help guide my conversation if I have to. Time limits. This applies in a lot of different ways. Sometimes our meetings go too long. I don't know that Mary had a chance this year to review how many meetings we had, but I think last year or the year before, she had counted, we had like 53 regular meetings between regular and committee of the whole meetings, and the average time was right about 3 hours. So you got 160 hours or so right there just in meetings without hearings and all of the other meetings that you have. We've challenged ourselves in the past, do we want to follow Robert's rules a little bit more closely, which would limit, for instance, the amount of time that a board member gets to speak or the opportunities that a board member gets to speak. There are very specific rules, and we're a little bit lax. We generally let somebody go with the flow when they're on a roll and they have a series of questions. But what is the board's thinking on whether we should be more strict, reduce our time for the meetings, or do we continue to let people talk the way that we have? Director Hayes.
I feel that everybody should be allowed the ample time they need to say what they have to say, but be reasonable and cognitive of other people's time as well. There may be some issues that you can sort out prior to a meeting and have some understanding for yourself. I do realize a lot of the questions that are asked, we all want to know the answers to, but I feel you can ask a question and get an answer in a reasonable amount of time without dragging it on unnecessarily. Just get to the point of what you have to say and be done with it.
Director Potts.
I agree with Director Hayes. I think it becomes incumbent upon the chair to husband us along and to keep us focused, and to occasionally say, okay, what is your question? Or, you know, let's get back to the point, because I know some of us do ramble on occasion, and I think that's the job of the chair, to sort of make sure everybody's on the highway and not on the shoulder or off into the ditch.
Anybody else? Director Beck, do you have any thoughts?
I think I recall you saying to me once, not long after I was elected, President Johansson, that because we're elected officials, it's very difficult to limit what people say. Am I remembering that correctly? You can't just cut people off because we are elected to office?
No, the chairman does have the authority to cut people off, but when it's happened, and in the time that I've been here, I've done it 3 times, and I've been admonished severely each time it's happened. No, the chairman does have the responsibility of maintaining order and decorum, but time has always been a tougher issue. And because you are elected, you do have kind of the authority to do what you want, but the chairperson still has to maintain order, and as Director Potts was suggesting, keeping people on track is something that the chairperson could do. I'm just saying it's a challenging thing. You have to understand where somebody's going and not cut them off too early, and then just accept the consequences. I got thick skin. I'm not too worried about it, but I want to be respectful of all of us and all of our community too, because they probably get tired of some of these meetings as well. Any other comments? Well, Director Beck, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you have more to say on that?
I was just going to say, I think it comes down to both the chairperson sort of redirecting if a person gets off onto a tangent and has been rambling for quite some time, but also to the board members to be cognizant of everyone else's time. And so I think it's a little bit of both. I don't necessarily think we need to enact more strict Roberts rules. In meetings I've been in that have very strict Roberts rules, I actually find that even more frustrating than the way we do it. So that's my opinion.
All right. If there's nothing else, I think I understand where the board wants to go on this. And so along that same line, though, we have considered things like time limits on meetings. Is that just kind of out of the question too? If we just accept that we're all going to be responsible and respectful to each other, maybe that's sufficient. Director DeSalvo.
I agree with what has been said. I think being respectful of others' time, but I think also I'll put a little burden back on the agenda committee. I mean, sometimes on Sunday night when I go in and start preparing for Monday, that agenda is forever. And I don't know how you do that. I know there's some things that timing is very sensitive and we have to vote on certain things and things have to be covered. But I would take a look at that when you're putting together the agendas. I know it's difficult when you're trying to cram so much in such a small amount of time, but if that could give us a little bit of reprieve. I'm not saying we meet 5 days a week, but I don't know how you could forecast what's coming up, but somehow trying to balance that may help. But that would be the only comment I would have there.
Okay, thank you. Director Hayes?
I think in response to Director DeSalvo, that can be a challenge. Sometimes sitting in the meetings, we have literally gone, well, this will take 20 minutes, this will take 45 minutes, and you can sort of gauge in your mind, but depending on how the discussion goes, it may be longer. And we do really make a conscious effort to try to time it to stay within a certain amount of time, but the discussion can take it a whole different direction when we're not cognizant of how many questions are asked. And I think it would be much easier if we get directly to your question. Have your questions written out, something simple, matter of fact, what do you want to know, rather than, taking the scenic route to get to it. That would help us stay pretty much on our time frame that we've allowed to work with that particular issue.
Thank you for that. Any other discussion?
I have one comment.
Sure.
I don't know if maybe it would be something that can be done every time we sit a new board or elect the board president. So on a yearly basis, just have either have the board vote on how they want to conduct meetings, or have a reminder or a statement that everyone needs to be cognizant of the time spent on a question, something like that, just so that as the board turns over, this isn't an issue that creeps back in, I guess.
All right, thank you. Anything else? If not, those are really the only issues that, well, there's one more. I'll tell you, I got admonished for one other thing, which is not encouraging the board to ask hard enough questions. And I don't even know how to express it other than that. It came up, I'll say it came up specifically at the last SBRC meeting. And as the chairperson, I accepted that responsibility, the leadership responsibility of not getting the board to a place where the SBRC wanted us. And so it's just a challenge. We aren't a political organization like a lot of organizations are. And I believe in every one of our board members and in the things and what you've talked about and the commitment and convictions and doing the right thing and voting your conscience and what's right for the district and for our kids. And this is just, it's a weird area, and I guess I'm just throwing it on the table. Does the board need stronger guidance from the president of the board? Director DeSalvo.
It's really hard to stay politically correct. Let me just start with that. There's often times when what is in my mind is not appropriate to come out, perhaps. It doesn't mean I don't understand it. It doesn't mean I'm not asking questions. I'm asking questions that I feel are appropriate. To say that we're not asking enough questions or enough in-depth questions, I would also comment that much of their timelines have been very quick. Like we don't often have a lot of time. Like we literally get a document when we show up at the meeting and we have to vote on it a half hour later. So that doesn't often give a lot of time either. And I'm not blasting anyone in administration or on this board, but I'm saying things are moving so rapidly and they're expecting an awful lot out of us very quickly and very impactful decisions. And so trying to make those quick choices is often very difficult. So I feel like we are trying very hard to do the right thing. We're trying very hard to ask the right questions when we feel appropriate. So I don't think that there's anything that you could do different to prod us to ask more difficult questions. I think we're doing that now. But silence doesn't mean that our questions aren't being answered. So I'm struggling with that.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? Director Gosa.
I would like to think I ask questions all the time. I mean, I'm sure Mr. Maloney cringes when he has to come up here because I always ask him a ton of questions, and he does a good job. He's prepared. And if they look back in board meeting minutes and stuff, you would see there are board requests out there for information and stuff like that. A few things I won't really get into, but I've harped on a few things for a couple years. And to say that we're not asking the right questions is crazy to me. I mean, some of the questions we don't ask at the board table, they're asked outside of the board table and stuff like that. Again, I'll say I wish I could ride on that high horse and just look down at everything, and I'm going to quit there while I'm ahead.
Thank you for those comments. Anybody else? Director Beck, anything? We're just about wrapping this up, and I'm going to ask one last question, which is there anything else from any of the board members with respect to board meeting protocol process that you want us to explore, do differently? Are we okay kind of doing what we're doing? Well, wait a minute. I started with Director Beck, and I wanted to get her, and then I'll come back to you, Director DeSalvo. Director Beck, anything?
No, I think everybody else has covered it pretty well.
All right, thank you. Director DeSalvo?
I would just comment that typically when I'm working, which is 50, 60 hours a week, I ask in a meeting that everybody put their phone on silent or vibrate during a meeting to be respectful of the speakers. And I know we're elected officials and we can conduct ourselves in a meeting as we see appropriate, but I would ask of respect that we try to do that. I have my phone because I was using my calculator earlier to calculate the monies. But I would just ask maybe we could have a reminder of that. Again, it's just a friendly courtesy, but wouldn't be a policy, just a reminder.
Thank you. I think that's a simple, common sense request, and we can even put it into our opening comments when we're talking about a little bit about protocol. Anything else? Director Hayes.
I have one comment that I would like to be publicly known, that this is a very unusual board. I think all of us have something different that we bring to the table. I really like the unity of the board. I like the fact that outside of board meetings, if we have additional questions, that we can email, text, call one another and get your perspective on it, and did you miss this, that, or the other, and talk about that, and just that unifiedness, that things take place outside of this room all the time that we discuss and we think about. And there may be something that maybe Julie and I may think about, and we may talk, for a while to get that sorted out. And I know Dan and I sometimes talk for hours on different situations. So I just want to let you know that I appreciate each one of you, and even sometimes Ralph, if he chooses to answer his phone, or President Johansson, but that's another story. But everyone, even Interim Superintendent Sneckloff, everyone is so willing to spend outside time away from this table. And most of the time when we speak, it's family time. We're at home in the evenings that we have to, get things discussed. So I just want you all to know how much I appreciate you and the unity that we share.
Thank you for those kind words. Anybody else? All right. If that's it, are there any administrative reports?
Not this time.
Are there any board requests? Oh, we do have some. Holy cow. We've got several board requests. First is from Director Gosa from 11-9. Agenda item, have a discussion on how to improve the security at our schools, maybe install metal detectors and have only one entrance. Why are you requesting this information or agenda item? This is extremely important due to the recent events in our schools. We need our buildings more secure for the safety of our students. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this agenda item? ASAP. Next is a request from Director Gosa, dated 11-9, information request. I would like a special education update at every regular board meeting. Why are you requesting this information? I believe this information is very important to keep updated on the progress in fixing special education. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this information? ASAP. Next is from Director Gosa, dated 11-9, information request. I'd like to see data including disruptions as well as incidents in our schools since students have been moved out of Keystone. Why are you requesting this information or agenda item? I believe this information is extremely important since we have started to see a significant rise in incidents in the schools. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this information ASAP? This request is from Director Gosa. It's dated 11/9. It's an agenda item, a request for an agenda item, to have a meeting including the sheriff and police chief to discuss the recent rise in incidents in our schools and what we can do to work together to solve these issues. Why are you requesting this information? I'm sorry, agenda item. This is extremely important to get a handle on things before they get worse. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this information or agenda item ASAP? Next, we have a request from Director Gosa, dated 11/9. This is for an agenda item. The description of the request is to have a discussion to look into having some type of FFA program at West, being that our rural schools feed into West. Why are you requesting this information or agenda item? I think this would be a great program for students to learn the ins and outs of farming, and I think there would be a lot of community support. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this agenda item ASAP? The last board request that we have is from Director Gosa. Date of request is 11/9. An agenda item. I think we need to discuss how to improve our policy on parent and board notifications when we have incidents that arise at schools. Why are you requesting this information or agenda item? With recent events we've had at some of our schools, I feel it is very important for parents and the board to be notified. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this agenda item ASAP? Okay, it's all the requests that I have right here. Are there no more? All right, thank you very much. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.